van! You hear it?
It is necessary for the recording of sound to convert the sound waves to corresponding changes in light. The sound waves produced by my voice are transmitted through the air to the microphone, where these sound waves are converted to changes in an electric current. These variations in the electric current are then amplified and used to control the light. This varying beam of light falling on the photoelectric cell produces variations in the electric current, which are directly proportional to the variations in the light beam. The sound track. As the varying electrical current in the photoelectric cell is small, a vacuum tube amplifier is required to increase it to the point where it will operate a loudspeaker. Soundtrack.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. In this episode, we got a party going on here. It's Friday, 11 o'clock in the early afternoon. And I got Teresa with me from the Spiritual Gangsters. You all know who she is from that amazing podcast. And she co-hosts with me as well. I'm also lucky enough to have Lisa with me. You all know who she is. She's been on the Patriot show and the Occult Rejects. Thank you very much, Lisa. And we also got the OG himself. We got Ron from Wicked Planet joining us this morning. So this is definitely going to be very exciting for me. And without further ado, we got the diva of deep dives. We got Dana herself, who I had on a few weeks ago. And honestly, I think she's doing some amazing work. She takes the time to actually read a bunch of stuff that nobody else wants to be bothered reading, and she goes through it, and shows all of us the interesting, weird shit that's inside these documents. And I just think you're killing it, and you're doing a great job out there. And I couldn't be happier to have you back on today. For people who don't know who you are yet, can you please let everybody know what your deal is, what your show's about, and where they can find your stuff, Dana?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for having me back. Rotting Jewels on Instagram and YouTube, and Dana Duda on Twitter. Right now, we are going through the, I would say, great adventures and misadventures of the Process Church of the Final Judgment, L. Ron Hubbard, Manson, you name it, Gladio. It's a lot of dark intelligence history and the occult.
Oh, you hit on Gladio too?
Oh yeah, because I made a direct Gladio connection yesterday to the Process.
Oh, man, see, you hit me with shit that I'm like, oh God, I've been wanting to get somebody on for Gladio. So you have to keep that in mind. I had John Cerrucci, I think. I was talking to him about that, but he was like, I don't think I have enough to cover a whole episode. So interesting. Good to know. Go check out her stuff for Gladio. Good stuff. And today, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
No,
I wasn't sure if you were done yet. And today we're going to be getting into false memory implants. Now, I'm sure that's probably, so many different ways. It could be through science, medicine, words, frequencies, sounds. So, I'm sure between all of us, we'll have something to chime in with this. But what got you into covering that or being interested in that yourself?
The late, great David McGowan, Program to Kill, specifically his discussion of the False Memory Syndrome and False Memory Syndrome Foundation. That was really where I sort of cut my teeth into more of the current parapolitical milieu, and specifically the stuff with the satanic panic. Because if you kind of watch the timeline of everything, literally they sort of both come in at the exact same time. And I don't think that that's a coincidence, especially when there ends up being a bunch of CIA doctors on the board of the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. And, it's interesting to note, and it could be irrelevant, but Michael Aquino, there were rumors of his passing online before the death certificate came out. And once it was confirmed that he was dead, then the False Memory Syndrome Foundation silently shut down. Except for there are still doctors out here running around saying that it's a real thing. But they waited to announce that until after it was confirmed that Aquino was dead. So maybe not coincidental. I don't know. It's just something to think about.
That is yeah, Aquino, man. I don't know. Yeah, and honestly, I mean, I could totally see when it comes to false memory implant. Do you think a lot of that could be more of like almost like MKUltra style techniques?
Oh, absolutely.
No, I'm just saying, like,
here's
some
the
people
thing.
might think you're thinking of like a chip in the head, but I'm thinking you can do that just through verbal masturbation on somebody. Yeah.
Sure, you absolutely can. And, some people, whether you want to call it MKUltra or you want to call it Project Monarch or the Monarch program, I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy around that. But in 1993, the Human Radiation Experiments Committee that Bill Clinton held, where they were apologizing for what they did, there's testimony there specifically where doctors who would later go on to the board of the False Memory Syndrome Foundation specifically, there were 3 or 4 women that were talking about what you would consider to be the Monarch program, where they're talking about being tortured, drugged, abused, the purposeful splitting of the mind. And that's why previously I had done an episode, because McGowan had covered it, on G.H. Estabrooks and hypnotism. And basically hypnotism is warfare, because you can manipulate people and, implant things in that way. But I think an important discrepancy here is that the false memory syndrome is not real. It never was. It was never a real syndrome, and it was never in the DSM, ever.
Oh.
It's fake. No matter what anybody says. Because there are still people out here pushing this junk science.
Well, the thing with the false memory syndrome, and I remember looking into that organization actually quite a while ago, and I'm trying to remember why I was doing it. I think it had to do with a case that I was following, where because you'll see that pop up a lot in a lot of sexual abuse cases, where they will implant or say a victim will come back, 20 years down the road and say, oh, this person sexually assaulted me at this particular time or whatever. And even though statute of limitations would have, probably expired on that, they would still make a big deal of it and then start accusing people of sexual abuse, that many years after the fact. And they're like, what are you talking about? Are you insane? And it's almost like it's a tool that they can use to get at somebody, just like how they used a tool of implanting child porn on your computers. They could say, well, we need to attack this guy, but we need a victim. Well, we don't have a victim. We can make a victim. And this is where this false memory implant comes in, right, Dana?
It can. That's one side of it. Absolutely. So I did a deep dive as far as the history of the False Memory Syndrome Foundation itself, because false memory syndrome, false memory, that was not even in the vernacular prior to the inception of the foundation. So the foundation was Jennifer Freyd. When she was an adult, she was in her early 20s, and repressed memories are a legitimate thing. That's been proven. Repressed memories are real. And she had a repressed memory that her father had done some terrible things to her for a long period of time when she was very young. She came out to her mother, and her mother, Miss Pamela Freyd, just could not let the world know what her husband did. So she literally turned around and created a pedophile charity organization, because that's what the False Memory Syndrome Foundation was, and that's what it stood for. There is an archive online, and I found one of the original circulars that they would mail out, because they would send out little pamphlets. And I think it was the second one. And literally it says, how do we know that we're not in the business of representing pedophiles? She gives 2 reasons. The first one, we have graying hairlines. We look like nice people and you would want to be friends with us. The second reason is a lie detector test that we know that we shouldn't have to take. And that's it. And right after that, you see all of this funding start coming in, CIA doctors joining the board, and Johns Hopkins, who still engages in the pandemic war games with like the World Economic Forum. They were the first and most important or prestigious university that recognized false memory syndrome as a real thing. So I think that it can be weaponized on either side, like anything else.
Okay, so for the listeners, so there is definitely a distinction between, and you kind of refreshed me on that, Dana, so thank you. So a big difference between false memory implants and repressed memories, right? Two totally different things.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. And as far as the repressed memories or false memories, this type of abuse where, especially again, considering the time of all this with the satanic panic, there's a lot of, I don't want to say like misinformation or disinformation, because I just think that, you know, these CIA doctors were straight up lying. So when someone goes through abuse, especially at a very early age like that, and it's repetitive, especially if it's methodical, if it's ritual abuse, because that is what a lot of this is, your brain does split. Your personalities do start to split. And there is a very particular process. You have a lot of options if you're going to do it to somebody, but they know what they're doing. And there have been court cases where I know in Australia specifically, this woman was allowed to testify against her father with, I think, 7 personalities, and she won, and he went to prison for what he did to her. They've done MRI scans where it shows as someone is switching, it shows like activity in a certain part of the brain. It starts to light up everywhere every time that they split. So those memories can be repressed in those different personalities if you're being ritually abused for that reason. And if that's happening to you, let's say a MK or Monarch type situation where they know that they're going to use you for something like you said, where, hey, we're going to need to weaponize this against someone in the future because they're not playing ball, whatever the situation is, that's going to be perfect for them because they will be able to trigger that personality and whatever memories they have implanted into there. I know it sounds crazy, but like the science is out there. The MRI studies are out there. This has been debunked. False memory syndrome is not real at all. The repressed memories are. Our bodies retain that. And our brains, especially when we're young, the splitting, I call it, because it's easier for me to understand, if I'm being abused and it gets to a certain point, our brains, it literally tries to protect us. So there's one layer. But then if it's done again, there's another and another. And that's why some people have like hundreds of personalities.
And not to be confused with schizophrenia either. Totally different thing. It's a defense mechanism that your subconscious puts into play.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there's people that are on the side of opposing the false memory implant that are saying that repressed memory is a real thing, whereas the false memory scientists are saying no, it's not a real thing. The scientists that are for the repressed memory say trauma itself cannot be repressed. Like, it's always going to be there. It is a memory that will never go away because it's the brain learning that this happened and therefore you want to try to avoid it. Whereas the scientists who are for the false memory are saying, no, that's not true. So you have two camps that are completely opposing each other when the MRI scans show exactly that repressed memory exists as well as trauma-based memory does exist. So.
Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right. That's why it's like, I don't want to say that it's misinformation or disinformation because the studies are out there. These people know that, but they're towing the company line of whoever their handlers are, in my opinion, because Elizabeth Loftus, she's probably the most well-known board member. She was a professional witness in the McMartin preschool trial, which is the most well-known case of the Satanic Panic. She was also a professional witness for O.J. Simpson, for Timothy McVeigh, for the Menendez brothers, and Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah, Ghislaine.
You know, somebody sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Nick. I just wanted to add something. So this is actually something that they can use to protect actual people that they know are committing these crimes, and they use this as a defense, right?
Because she's always served on the defense, isn't right, Dana? She's always
always.
Yeah.
She always serves on the defense. She literally, her job is to discredit victims. That's her job.
And that's what I was getting at. That's insane. But you know this happens, right? Even Hillary Clinton tried to pull this on an early case before she became, famous, or whatever you want to call it. One of her famous cases when she was defending somebody that was accused of abusing a young girl, and she used kind of this very similar tactic. Very interesting.
There was an artist. I mean, and I've seen it in a couple of other people. I think I covered a long time ago on the Occult Rejects. I can't remember the artist's name, but some of these people that they call it now DID. When 20 years ago it was just like, no, you got multiple personalities, and we called you Sybil, as a joke or something. Like now they got DID, and some of those people that I've seen, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because Heavy Metal Rehab mentioned something about Oprah, and I remember this lady was even on Oprah's show, and Oprah promoted her. She was a lady that had DID, and she painted, and she had multiple personalities painting as well. And she'd have all these different styles. So, I mean, it was actually interesting because you could tell, which painting was done by which, personality. Multiple different styles, but there was one that was showing a lot of, looks like ritual sexual abuse. She was drawing a lot of pictures like that. And then, another one of her personalities drew, this huge Kabbalistic Solomon's Temple wild occult art, and she's like, I don't even know where that came from. She's not even understanding where all this stuff comes from. And I just start to wonder, is this side effects of magic and occultism and MKUltra style stuff on people? It's just very weird because I've noticed some people that claim DID have some almost weird occult ties to them somehow.
I think
or
that
they
there
display something
is
like that.
A lot of that. I think that whether you want to call it DID, multiple personality disorder, there are consistently a lot of individuals who report they may not identify it as ritual abuse or, satanic ritual abuse, but there was some sort of abuse going on, and that was from a very early age. And a lot of times I've read a few books on it, and I'm actually working with someone right now specifically who, it starts within the family, but the family generally has ties to someone in upper crust or politics or government, what have you, and you're basically being trained. You are being trained and primed to, fulfill a role, so to speak. So whether people want to call it MK or Monarch, I mean, it is legitimate, but I don't think that it's sort of the silly stuff that people see on, I don't know, Twitter and YouTube, where it's people being super crazy and wild. It's it's not really that fantastical. You know what I'm saying? These things usually aren't when you get down to the brass tacks of it. And these people aren't really running around seeking attention, so to speak. I'm not saying that people shouldn't get their story out there, but I think that that is part of a controlled opposition thing where they're trying to put certain faces out to say, well, maybe it is. Maybe it's not. Because William Colby didn't deny that the Monarch program existed. When the Franklin scandal happened, he wouldn't confirm or deny. He just said, well, I've heard of it, but I don't know. And then, he ends up dead on a boat in the middle of the night. So,
he gave a politician type answer.
Yes, he did. Yeah. He gave the company answer. Yeah.
I think it's interesting though, like Nick, how you brought up like that this person who had DID was doing like occult art and whatnot, and like apparently not knowing like where that came from. Just from like talks I've heard from exorcists too, like they say that like a way for the demonic to enter is through trauma, right? So through this like ritual abuse, putting on these personalities, maybe it's not really like partially split personalities, but also like the demonic entering and then switching which one is coming out when, you know, like that's the program. I don't know, just a thought.
I do think I mean, not that I want to get into this heavily or really talk about it too much, but unfortunately I do think like sexual abuse is probably like a really good tool in fracturing someone's mind, because they're going to want to forget that whole situation.
Yeah, that testimony from the Human Radiation Experiments Committee, like I said, there were at least, I think, 2 CIA doctors that went on to be on the False Memory Syndrome Foundation board, and those women credibly accused them of doing exactly that to them up until the 70s, which is after when MKUltra was over, right? So we know that that's all just a complete joke. But I mean, yes, obviously that is very traumatic.
You know, earlier you had said something, and I don't want to forget to bring it up. I think we were kind of like talking about like people trying to like neither deny, like make people think that it never happened or it did happen. If I remember correctly, I think, one, Teal Swan, that for some reason that made me think of Teal Swan, but I've also, if I remember correctly, I think me and Teresa might have covered some like Mormon type. It was an episode where I brought up the Mormons. Who knows which reason why I do like covering them, but and there was like something up where I think some doctor was like kind of questionable and some like weird, child scandal, and like I think like they actually kind of accused her of like I think trying to make people forget or create the ideas that this happened when it never did.
So was the psychologist or therapist Barbara Snow is her name?
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys are familiar. So I don't know if you know who Teal Swan is. So just so Dana, you were bringing up before how people can like abuse this idea of like false memory and whatnot and like putting people on trial and ruining their reputation over this stuff. Basically, Teal Swan is a spiritual influencer currently, and she has like a massive following. She has very interesting ideas over like depression and suicide. Like she'll tell people, if you don't like your life, you should just commit suicide so you get reincarnated and can have a new life. Basically, is like the just she has very extreme ideas, but she has a massive following. Her whole backstory.
If you're monetized, that's not a good idea.
Well, she was ritually abused.
That's
her whole
insane.
Backstory. Yeah, she's nuts. Her whole backstory is that she was abused in this cult and satanic, and very much like during the Satanic Panic times, and that her therapist Barbara Snow was like implanting false memories into these victims supposedly. But then if you talk to Teal Swan's like childhood best friend, she's like, Teal has always been a compulsive liar. All she does is want attention. Like she wasn't even suicidal till I was suicidal, and then saw how much attention I was getting, and then so Teal Swan I think is just an example of like someone can use the idea of false memory, right, and just literally creating like these whole narratives and like imaginative backstories. It's pretty scary stuff, but
it is scary because it generally involves people that are already very vulnerable, like people that are, whether they've been abused or they're mentally unstable. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but if they are in some sort of situation or mental state, and obviously, children are the biggest targets of this kind of stuff because that can be weaponized on either side. You know what I mean?
And the study shows that the children are the easiest to implant false memory. They're of all the demographics, children are the easiest to be suggestive as well as to take it on and to commit the actual false memory into implantation. And then just as a side note to insert this, where memory occurs is the hippocampus, which is the horn of Ra, the seahorse area, and then also the frontal lobe area.
I think that looks like a dragon in your head.
Yeah. So I thought that's kind of interesting how the whole memory, demonic, occult, Horn of Ra, hippocampus, all that stuff kind of plays into that.
Yo, go take the
Well, I mean,
hippocampus.
this is Nazi science. So
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. It's Nazi science. Yeah.
That's
Okay,
what I
is that
think.
why-
Nail on the head right there. Exactly. Right?
Is that why I got asked to come in on this show?
I'm just trying to get the word Nazi brought up somehow.
Ding, 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 ding.
I'm the
Either
Nazi
that or
guy,
Mormon.
and I'm the Nazi guy in the podcasting world, as far as looking into some of the crazy stuff where a lot of this stuff that's happening now originates from Nazi studies. Because when we brought them all over during Paperclip, like there was a reason why we wanted them over, and the same thing with MKUltra. Like that's a descendant of a Nazi program, and possibly Monarch also. I need to look into the difference, Dana, between Monarch and MKUltra, because they're very similar, but they're separate operations, correct?
they've never admitted or denied that it exists. But it's around the Franklin scandal. It was Paul Bonacci, so he was the first one when he was on the stand. He was the first person to bring it out. And then William Colby, was it William Colby or Bill Casey? I think it was William Colby. He didn't deny it, but he wouldn't confirm it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, as far as it being Nazi science, like even when you look up Project Chatter, those were mescaline, MDA, and acid projects being done in Dachau specifically, and they literally just moved it over here. The Rockefellers were funding this kind of stuff before World War II. People have a hard time I don't know if it's like cognitive dissonance, but it's like, the science never stopped. The projects never stopped.
Yeah, we
they
went to
just
Camp
slapped a
King.
label on it and moved them here.
I mean, we even went to Germany and visited their places.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we did.
I mean,
We sure did. And we paid for a lot of it. And so did the British. And the British were doing it before the Nazis were. And it's literally just kind of this like big circle. And then they bring it over here. And, now it's all for national security, right? And then it goes underground, in the very early 70s. But, I mean, that's a lie. Everybody knows that that's a lie.
Yeah, and Rockefeller was a big Nazi sympathizer in the beginning, too, along with other American corporations, Henry Ford, for one, who was also tied in with the Rockefellers. All those big money people were tied in with each other.
Absolutely. They had a lot to gain. They were playing the long con. They knew what they wanted. Like when you look at some of the older Tavistock authors and Tavistock doctors, and even the doctors that preceded them, this is what they wanted. They wanted a sort of country population that was dependent on psychiatry so that they could modify behavior, group control, all of that. And they say it multiple times, all of their writings, all of their speeches. It's, we need to get this into the government sphere. We need to move this into creating child psychiatry. And it is a good thing that we should go there, and we will go there. And that was actually their stated purpose of World War II, was to kick this off. So I say very loosely that the Nazis were allowed to do what they did in World War II because someone was allowing them. We knew exactly what was going on. Our CIA director was literally over there helping them lock in nickel and steel deals through his law firm. So that's why I really want people to get a grasp on history soon. You know what I mean?
I've questioned myself because of doing an MKUltra series with Thrash, and just like from things that I've learned from other people. With World War II, if you start looking at like everybody involved and looking at every country and their camps, I just in certain things like 731 and some of the things Nazis have been known for doing, I just also wonder, was this like a prime time for mass human experimentation on all sides? Doing something.
I think so.
I know that kind of sounds like a
there's a good
little
argument.
shitty. Makes the bad situation even sound shittier. But I do wonder that, because we had camps. Everybody had fucking camps for some fucking reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And we pardoned everybody from 731.
Yes.
We gave them immunity.
And Russia took them. Russia took Nazis as well. And then we all of a sudden, after World War II, we got this Cold War with Russia. Maybe we just have magicians on both sides directing a fucking movie for us.
Yeah.
That's what it is. They're all it's literally them playing war games while just basically pilfering through everybody. And obviously though, they need a slave class, right? That's why they're not just completely nuking us all into next week. It's because they need people to be their slaves, to do X, Y, and Z. And that's what the entire pharmaceutical industry is for. They're not telling everybody to get healthy on their own because that would benefit them.
Yeah, 100%.
Totally.
And this is why, you know, if the Russians and the Americans didn't think they could gain something by smuggling or in some cases blatantly just bringing them over on both sides, like they would have just left all them Nazis right there or executed all of them, right? But that was the big rush to get into who was going to get into Berlin first, you know, not to bring World War II history into this, but it makes sense when you look at the big picture, right? As far as getting the scientists, even some philosophers and doctors and things like that. It was a big rush to see who was going to get who, because whoever had got the best of them was going to have the upper hand. And this is another reason why I do not understand why Eisenhower let Stalin and the Russians get into Berlin first. He should have listened to George Patton, one of my favorite generals. And George Patton said, we can roll into Berlin and we can keep rolling right to Moscow. And they should have let him do that. But they knew they had a plan that the United States and Russia were going to have this fake Cold War, which, you know, there's a lot of predictive programming in movies that wants to convince everybody that we were at each other. You know, when all the time when we're spying against each other, we're spying against each other to get their technology because, well, you know, Americans, like, you know, the OSS, you know, the predecessor to the CIA is like, oh, well, you know, they got that scientist. We probably should have got him. So we need to find out what they're doing with him, and same thing back and forth. And that's all it came down to. And in the back scenes, we're probably United States and Russia, even probably to this day, are two of the biggest allies on this planet.
Well, it was
Absolutely.
The
it's all a show.
It was the ultimate draft, Ron.
Yeah.
They basically looked at which scientists or which mathematicians or which disease people each one wanted, and they pitted against each other and say, no, I want him, no, I'll give him them. And then the Super Bowl was the Cold War, and we basically sat through it all.
Yeah.
That's a really good way to put it. It was the ultimate draft.
Yeah. I grew up in the heart of the Cold War. I was born in 1963. So I grew up with all this stuff, and I remember all the stories. And then, sure, they would say, well, we got a couple of people that we found out that were double agents or were agents, you know, spying for the Russians. So we're going to just execute them. Again, just fall guys, patsies in the big game. That's all it ever was.
Yeah, they serve their purpose.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
I have a question actually for Dana, since you've done so much research on this topic. Is there a difference between, or in your opinion, is this related, false memory and past life regression? Like recalling stuff from like a past life? Because I've done a past life regression before, and I'm like, am I really remembering this, or is this like my imagination, like making a story out of something from my subconscious? Have you ever come across that in your research?
So I haven't looked into that specifically, but one of the Scientology whistleblowers that I've been working with a lot lately, they have, because, you know, in Scientology, they believe in past lives, right? And in reincarnation. But when she did her research into it, what she calls it is genetic memory. And so it's the way that she explains kind of when you step back and look at it. So like the birth of psychiatry, World War II, this Nazi science, all of that, it's them trying to figure out how to dull our senses, you know, our innate human senses that they are trying to recreate so deeply. They're trying to find it and suppress it. But there is some sort of genetic memory that has been proven. I don't know the studies on it, but I don't think that I don't think that it's not real, and I don't think that it's necessarily a figment of your imagination. I mean, our brains are so complex. Elon's been running around trying to put chips into people's brains, and he's killing everybody with them, right? And the FDA still approved it. So this is the one thing that they can't recreate, that they've been trying to for forever.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it's something to be written off necessarily.
I think Dr. Gabor Mate talks a lot about genetic memory. Yes. Yeah, I absolutely believe if you can store all of the diseases that your ancestors have ever come across, why would you not? Why would the DNA not store the memories of certain things? Like you hear, like for instance, you hear like the screeching of a bird and you duck down. Why do you duck down? I think in some ancestral way, all of this has been implanted in some way, but correct that the whole implanting of a false memory, I think they're playing in on that exact part of the brain and hence trying to tap into it. So yeah, I think, and the one thing I wanted to say was that the false memory implant camp wants to look at fear-based implantation, and the other camp is saying absolutely not. You are not going to do that. That's not, and they definitely, and that's the part of the hippocampus, the amygdala, that basically is the holy grail to psychology. So.
Absolutely. It's truly a, hearts and minds campaign, right? That's what it's been the entire time. So I don't know. I mean, it's something for people to look into. All of the old circulars are out there in the archives because, like I said, this foundation is what created the term false memory. This was not in the vernacular, not in the newspapers. I've dug through the archives. It just wasn't there, even with brainwashing, right? Because obviously those types of cult brainwashing, Manchurian candidates, Jolly West, right? Because of course Jolly West ends up on the False Memory Syndrome Foundation board, as does Margaret Singer. But the board itself, specifically in the archives, you can see they start getting a ton of money, a ton of government funding, and a lot of protection. And their track record speaks for itself as far as silencing victims and allowing criminals to walk away, because that's what they've done. And Ghislaine Maxwell is just the latest example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One more thing.
Crazy.
Sorry, I didn't want to dominate the conversation, but you had mentioned, Dana, you had mentioned Elizabeth Loftus, and I had never heard of her, I'll admit. And so I was like, who is this person? So I dug in and I was like, it kind of originates with her, the whole false memory thing. And not completely, but she was teaching a class, according to the stuff I read. She was teaching a class in cognitive psychology, and she had an undergrad student. She basically tasked her students to write a paper on extra credit and do like an experiment. I think it was Jim Cohn that came up with the Lost in the Mall experiment. And it was a paper where he basically, I think, experimented on his family and wrote about it. And she took it with another, well, not took it, but she basically built on that paper that had never truly been tested, and then took it into an experiment with another person, and then basically gets funding for that.
That's
and then,
right.
And then just keeps pushing that whole narrative. And then she transitions to being this whole expert witness. And whenever she would be an expert witness to a big case, and they would immediately shoot it down, the judge would throw it out, inadmissible, whatever, she'd receive an award from British Society of Psychological something, or some other, it was something big. And it was just like, how can you not say she's not being groomed? How can you say that she's not, in the pockets of people? She's receiving funding for something that is completely bogus. And then she doesn't do well in a court case and they give her an award. I mean, it's so shady.
I know. I completely agree. You're absolutely right. That is exactly like her sort of comeuppance, it's really interesting. So William Sims Bainbridge, the guy that, you know, researched in Scientology and then researched in the process, him and Elizabeth Loftus went to Harvard together at the exact same time for 7 years. And then she goes this way and he goes the cult way, right? And I'm like, well, that's interesting because they are heavily involved in like the anti-cult movement, you know, as that started to come. I mean, it was fading out, but then you had the satanic panic. And so they're so concerned about satanic cults specifically. But yeah, all of her science that she cites is literally science that she wrote that was never tested against anything else. Yeah. And it's the same thing with the other board members. All their cases got thrown out too, or the judge would be like, this is junk science.
One thing that I think Ron and Nick will find interesting is this was at University of Washington. So tying back to the Kohlberger, right?
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting.
There's so much weird stuff just in that area. It's just like, what?
Yeah. And they have a huge lab on that whole cognitive psychology, implantation, memory, everything there at University of Washington, which, I don't know, I thought that was a neat little tie-in.
Might be something to look into, for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's out by Zorro Ranch, Epstein's Zorro Ranch, there's the Mind Research Institute, which gives me major old school SRI Essalon vibes. There's something weird going on out there, but eventually I would like to do a deep dive on that because I'm wondering if they're taking this false memory into its sort of next phase, maybe, since the False Memory Syndrome Foundation closed. And Ghislaine Maxwell's sister is involved with the Mind Research Institute. So,
of course.
You know, I guess this is like kind of interesting how I had, you know, I was thinking about it yesterday. I don't know what really made me come to the idea that maybe somehow they're both connected. But now you're mentioning Epstein. And I do think he was probably into eugenics. Do you think these things kind of like almost have a connection?
Yes. Because of the
What do you mean?
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Like eugenics and false memories, like is it somehow like maybe a part of it, or it just seems weird. Like I could see how people that I think Mormons are into eugenics, and I also think they're into, you know, possible false memory syndrome. It just seems like I've noticed with groups of people that I think are involved in possibly like putting false ideas into your head is also into that. And I'm just like, you know, is there a connection there?
There was a paper in 2012 where they showed that brand new glial cells are harder to use for implanting of memory, but you have to catch them at a specific time when they're starting to maturation. And that certain genetic profiles of people are more easily manipulated than others. And I'm not saying, I'm sorry, not people, mice species. And then I think they try to take it on to other species. But it was proving that certain strains or certain races of the animals that are being experimented with were more susceptible to false memory implant than others. So yes, I do think that there is a genetic link to eugenesis and well as false memory implants.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Dana, you mentioned Margaret Sanger earlier. Now you want
Margaret
to talk
Singer.
Okay, are we talking two different people?
Yeah, because there's Margaret Sanger, the eugenicist, and then there's
okay.
Margaret Singer, the CIA spook doctor.
Okay, I got you. Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, I believe that Epstein was running a breeding program to bring people into, like, say, you know, kids with no documentation, right? So that they could be used in some type of operation going down the road, maybe some form of mind control operation or his own version of spooks, because, you know, he was affiliated with Mossad. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, Ghislaine Maxwell's dad was Mossad, and, you know, and you want to talk about the stuff that comes out of there as far as any type of mind control thing goes like that. And what I find interesting too is, not to get all, you know, conspiratorial, but, you know, everybody talking, you know, about the massive amount of Mandela effect they've been experiencing in the last, say, 3 or 4 years or 5 years. And you wonder if that is something that could be tied into, not really a Mandela effect at all, but false memories put into people so they can say, oh no, Oscar Mayer hot dogs wasn't spelt that way, it was spelt this way, or all the other classic ones. I mean, I know it's kind of a tangent on it, but there might be a connection there too, because I experience it all the time, and at my age, I'm like, I remember that being a certain way, but somehow are we being kind of tricked into believing it was something else, which would be, to me, a form of a false memory.
I think so too. I mean, the Mandela effect is introduced into the vernacular for a reason, right? It's these things come out and they're allowed to be popular because of someone else higher up that we generally don't see. Specifically with Epstein, as far as his ties to eugenics. I mean, he was absolutely into transhumanism. He is on record stating he wanted to seed the human race with his DNA. And yeah, I mean, he was definitely more than a garden variety eugenicist. That is very true. I found the court records from the Bahamas, and I can't remember the name of the company, but he wanted to basically create the Khan Institute on Little St. James. And what it was going to be was kids on the spectrum, obviously targeting those that are very talented with math and science and that are creative, and making it an incentivized program for these individuals where basically, hey, like your kid will get a free lunch or they'll get extra, X, Y, and Z as long as you sign up for this. And the goal was for it to basically be a Neuralink with kids where they would create this sort of AI program and then they would run it themselves. So transhumanism, like brain chip type stuff with disaffected minority populations who are poor, running this on this island that he said on record has the most steel trap sort of internet in the entire world. So that's what he was doing there. God only knows what he was doing at Zorro Ranch.
Just side note, the Masons have a child identification program where they put a chip in them.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know if
Yeah,
people knew that.
you find that a lot lately, and what they're doing is they're using the human and the child trafficking as an excuse to chip all your kids so that they can know where your kids are. Like, I am not letting my kid get chipped for nothing. If somebody tries to kidnap her, they got to deal with me and my family and our associates. They don't want to do that.
I find it funny how
so I'm not too worried about it, but you can see where they would bring these programs in. It's like, oh, we'll bring it in under the guise of protection and safety, right? It's just like every other program that they try to bring in, that they know that later down the road they're going to be able to use these chips for nefarious reasons, right? Yeah.
I think that that's the goal of putting them in the first place, because if you talk about this kind of stuff, you're told that you're feeding into a QAnon narrative, that this is just a new satanic panic, that there is no child trafficking problem, anything like that. And it's like, so do they want to chip your kids so that they know where their product is going? So that they know where their money line is moving? Because that's what it sounds like to me, is that they want to see and be able to keep track of. And if someone who does go looking for their child, who has the means to, because obviously they generally, statistically, with a few exceptions, but they do target orphanages, they do target hospitals, mental facilities. Those are easy places for children to be kidnapped, period. And obviously family court, right? Like, that's a huge problem there specifically. But I mean, yeah, of course they're going to track them, because if someone goes looking for their kid, they're going to know, okay, it's time to move them somewhere else. You know what I mean? That way they're not found.
What I thought was interesting with this chip stuff that I came across for the kids is that, probably like a year and a half ago on the Occult Rejects, we covered the Shriners and the Jesters. We did like a 3-part series on them, and we showed multiple court cases. So it wasn't made up stuff. We actually brought receipts and showed that these cases existed. So they have some kind of like history of trying to traffic underage women, even out of the country, and women in other countries. And like the Mormons are kind of known for doing some, real shady shit with kids. And they also seem to be two of the bigger, I guess, you hear them saying that this is a good idea. And it's like, what the hell? Like how, like, I guess to a normie, you wouldn't think anything of it. But to me, I'm just like, yo, these are like the wrong people chipping kids. I hate to say it.
Yeah. I would say so, because if anybody's been paying attention to what's been going on in Utah, specifically with the LDS, things have been coming to a head as of late. There was a case that I was following, and now I'm back on it again because that's another whistleblower that I've been working with. But there's a satanic ritual abuse case from the 80s that now it's all coming out.
I think me and
these
Teresa,
people
we
are getting
covered that,
arrested. Right? Left and right, and it's legitimate. And I'm like, excuse my language, but I'm like, fuck yeah, like finally these people are getting some sort of justice, and they're not being told that they're crazy, because one of these people is extremely wealthy. There's hundreds of pages of victim testimony. The president of the entire LDS, apparently there might be some ties there, so he may be stepping down here soon. And then you've got Operation Underground Railroad, that Tim Ballard, who everybody has probably seen him in the news. That whole operation has fallen apart rather quickly since the release of that movie, which I don't think that the timing, I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that they got that movie out so they could get their money and then he could move on, because it has come out now that literally he was lying about all of that stuff, everything.
That is true. There was
That's crazy.
I think in New York, Catskill, New York Prepper is mentioning, and I do think I've even seen this on the news myself. And I guess I didn't really think much about it, but I think there was like something to do with the daycare and like kids getting drugged or coming across drugs or something. And I was just like, wait, what the? I didn't even click in my mind. Like, who knows what that could be?
Are you talking about the latest one in New York City?
I think so, yeah. I think it might have been. I remember seeing it briefly on the news.
About the gunman? There was like something with a gun arrest, and that led to like all the other stuff?
There was that too. I think there might be two different situations at daycares, to tell you the truth. I think there was one where they actually were getting dosed, possibly. And then there was another one where I think there was like drug residue being found somewhere because there was a connection to someone selling guns. Some weird shit. There was some wild, weird stuff about actually child daycares.
This just happened recently in New York City, where a child daycare, a little boy or several of the little kids had gotten severely sick, and it was actually they were overdosing on fentanyl, and sadly one of the little boys passed away. And then of course they had gone in and investigated it. They found huge amounts of fentanyl there, so they were using the daycare center as a cover for drug distribution in New York City. That might be the one that you're thinking of, NY. That was just like a week or so ago that was going on. You guys want to hear a really funky thought process I went through the other day?
Go for it.
Check this out. So the school year just began, right? We all know that. And most people that are familiar with me know that I've been raising my niece now for several years. And she just had her pictures taken, right? And so she brought her picture packet home. And I was just remembering, just like this weird thought that I had, was, boy, back in the day, it was a local studio that took your pictures, like a local studio in the next town over or in the capital. And now it's some big corporation that actually, gets the contract to go around and take all the school pictures for all these kids. And for whatever reason, and I know it's all the stuff that we've learned over the recent years. I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, some big, huge corporation somewheres on a huge database has pictures of all of these girls and boys that are 12 or 13, 14 years old. Little G just turned 13, and she's a real pretty girl. And I'm thinking to myself, do they have somebody have access to all these where they're like, oh, we like this one, we like that one, we like this one. and they know where they're at, because when you fill out all the paperwork, you have to put your name and your address and your phone number and all this stuff on the information. And it was just a weird thought process I was going through, but it makes 100% sense, because it's just like the old theory that when you used to go into the shopping stores, like before we had Walmarts, there would be this wall with all these pictures of missing children. And a theory came out that, well, these aren't just, missing children, flyers. These are actually advertisements, because we have these kids. And if you're interested in them, well, all you got to do is call these numbers, right? I mean, that's a theory that's been going around for quite a few years now. But when I saw her picture of her packet that she brought home, I'm like, oh my God, this is not a local studio taking these pictures now. This is a countrywide company now, because they're all digital, right? They're all digital, Teresa. So now
that's what I was just gonna say. Now it's all digital. You order the pictures online. You don't even order like a hard copy. Like, yes, they give you the proof, but you have to go do it and store it digitally.
Yeah, but somebody has all these pictures on servers somewheres of all these kids all over the country.
Maximus Incorporated. Look up I think it's Nooga Jack, and I think it's Nooga, Nooga Jack, or just type in Maximus on Twitter. He is the go-to. These people, this is literally the most dangerous, nefarious corporation in the world. They have the contracts to literally everything. They traffic through family court. They traffic through the foster system. They traffic through hospitals. And he has done a lot of serious work on that. But that's it. They are the beast behind a lot of this. Like the octopus, they're the head of the octopus.
Interesting.
Yeah. Wow.
Damn.
That's
Now I just
not a strange
scared
thought
everybody.
process.
No.
No.
Ron, I never thought of that before. Oh
I
my
just
God.
scared everybody that's having their kids' pictures done.
No, I
but
think it's valid.
At the very least, they know what school they go to. Not even your home address, but it's more likely they could snatch them up from school than home, even, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yes, absolutely, because literally,
90s white van flashbacks.
Oh God.
Van to the school.
There's cases out of Utah, because obviously there's a lot of problems there, not just with the LDS, but involving the LDS with adoptions, with foster care, things like that, where, certain people are targeted. If someone, who knows who, if it's a picture on social media or if they see them out in public, where they want that kid, and so they create a case and they lie. And they come and they take your kid away, but they do it under the guise of Child Protective Services. There are so many cases out there like that, where you can literally see videos where cops just run up and they'll be like, give us the child and we're taking you to jail if you don't. And they're like, what the hell are you talking about? Where's the proof? Like, what's going on? How are you taking our baby from us? And I think that it's not a crazy, weird thought process. I think it's important, because literally I remember this stupid article in Time magazine where, insultingly, they used the milk carton from the Johnny Gosch case, and they said the fake child trafficking epidemic. And it was talking about how none of this is real. It's a satanic panic, QAnon conspiracy, even though Johnny Gosch was kidnapped and has never been seen again, and he was a real person. They had the audacity to do that. So I think that more people need to kind of grasp that this is a real thing and it is a real possibility. And these people, they don't work to help us. I know that there are individuals that try to do the right thing within their role of their job, whatever that may be. Not everybody's bad, not everybody's good, but they don't hold the purse strings, right? And it's the people that we don't see who do. And the elderly and the children are the people that are the most vulnerable, and we need to protect them. So we have to consider all of these things at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'll tell you, when you're dealing with Child Protective Services, or in the state of New Hampshire, it's called DCYF. It took me over a year to get custody of my niece. and I am her blood uncle. She's my youngest brother's daughter. And they were like, well, you know, if this doesn't work out, we're just going to put her in foster care. And I said, yeah, good luck with that. I said, well, what you're going to do is you can vet me as much as you want. You're not going to find anything. I said, but I can assure you that she's coming with me one way or another. There's no way I'm going to let that kid go into foster care. Our family, I lost one of my nieces in a tragic accident 4 years ago. I told the state, I said, listen, we lost one of our family members. We're not going to lose another one. There's no reason for this kid to go into foster care. My wife and I can provide for her beyond her wildest dreams. And you know, and they still went through this huge process that literally took a year. And of course, they're blaming that on COVID, right? Oh, well, because of COVID, you know, we can't come to your house and look at your house and see if it's going to be a good place for her to live. So I sent them an extensive video of my house, and they're like, oh, yeah, you're all set. It's like, you know,
I'm glad that you.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up that it's DCYF because you're absolutely right. And with the Mormons, there's a case going on right now. If you guys have seen it in the news, there's an individual by the name of Nicholas Alverdian /Rossi /Arthur Knight. He faked his death and fled to Scotland because he's a notorious rapist from Utah, right? That's a damn lie. I've proven that. I did a deep dive on him. And when you look at his story specifically, he is the new Franklin scandal, in my opinion. This whole entire case that ties into the satanic case against the LDS right now, this is the new Franklin scandal. This individual, Nicholas Alverdian, is his birth name, but he was a congressional page boy. So that was how he got his education, working within the political system in Rhode Island. But he was also a ward of the state, so DCYF specifically. And once he was, you know, released from being a ward, he filed a massive lawsuit against 4 states that he was trafficked through. There were 16 state representatives that testified on his behalf that they knew about this night to night program. That's what it was called, where at night, without any reason, without any notification or warning, children are being trafficked night to night through different houses, through all these different states. And he was getting laws passed there to keep Rhode Island kids in Rhode Island. He pissed off a lot of the right people, in my opinion, because if you're pissing off the right people, you're doing a good job, right? He got a lot of laws passed. He was doing great work. He wrote a book about his experience. But things happened and his family's involved with the LDS. Did he do some of these things? Did he not? I don't know. But evidently he faked his death. I think that he was trying to get away from some of these very powerful politicians specifically because he was creating a very big problem for them. And yeah, they're extraditing him back, I think in a couple of days, I think next week. But that's the truth of what happened, is that was on record. And Boys Town from the Franklin scandal, specifically, was implicated, including 2 men that were involved in the Franklin scandal.
Is he being
they
extradited?
were still doing that.
I'm sorry, Dana. Is he being extradited? Is he being extradited back to Rhode Island?
No, he's getting sent to Utah.
Oh, Utah. Okay. Because, you know, I have extensive knowledge of how the state of Rhode Island works. It's the crookedest little state in the union. That's the big joke down there. I know because I know just nothing we're going to get into tonight, but I know that for a fact. And that used to go right up to the governor back when Governor Dupree was the governor, who was taking plenty of money from nefarious people. He actually got called out on that, but anyway.
When I was looking into that, I was looking into the Rhode Island State Police because the chief of police was doing these podcast interviews about him and, you know, just, oh, he's this notorious rapist and he faked his death. And I'm like, people can't just fake their deaths and create a new identity. Like, that's movies, right? That's not really logistical in real life. So I did a deep dive on the Rhode Island State Police and I was like, these people are so dangerous, like, and so crooked and so corrupt. So I 100% believe you because they're a bunch of thugs.
I'm going to insert something real quick. Ron, you jarred something with the whole kids taking pictures, keeping their faces. That Jim Cohen guy, the one that wrote the paper on the Lost Mall, the student of, what's her name? Leftist, whatever. He helped develop a facial recognition database to where they're looking at specific parts of the face that is undetected to the eye and logging it in University of Washington, and then when he went to go do his PhD at University of Arizona.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
that's great.
It's actually really scary. You know, the thing is, I don't understand how some of these organizations that want you to believe a certain narrative are also the ones that want you to believe that there's no such thing as child trafficking when 800,000 people go missing in just the United States every year, and it's a very high percentage of that 800,000 that are kids that are not of adult age yet, so 17 and under, right?
Yeah,
Crazy.
absolutely.
Well,
They
and
don't
then
want
you have the
asking
teal
questions.
swans. You have the teal swans of the world who take advantage of this sort of situation and make a whole lucrative career out of it. It's very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something to profit off of, right? When people suffer, there's always people that are going to come in and they're going to grift. But I think that the consistency of satanic panic, false memory syndrome foundation, now we're moving into like, this is a QAnon narrative and this is the new satanic panic. It's time for people to look back and reflect at what the satanic panic really was, because I personally think it was a distraction from Iran-Contra, and kind of see it for what it is. And, you know, like you said, Ron, look at the numbers, because the numbers are there. And that's, you know, there was a whistleblower from HHS, I think at the end of April, where they were talking about how, you know, 80,000 by that time, children were being trafficked specifically, like over the border. Nobody, and then it just went away. You know, it's like she came out, she gave this speech on TV, she's talking about it, they have a hearing, and then it's just poof, nothing. And it's like, well, where the hell did the kids go? Seriously.
Yeah, and
that shouldn't be a QAnon thing.
Nobody is answering those questions at all, Dana. And the number one way that they can, language that they can use to discredit anybody's investigation, label it a conspiracy theory, is to tie it into QAnon or the Q movement, because Q and QAnon is two separate things. And I get it. There's a lot of craziness in that, the whole Q thing. But if they can say, oh no, that's QAnon, that's QAnon conspiracy. What was the latest conspiracy that they said was a QAnon thing that they made a big deal about? And it's like, okay, this has absolutely nothing to do with QAnon, like at all. But all they got to do is say QAnon, and automatically the masses will discredit it, right? So that's their go-to. And when this QAnon thing blows over, it's just going to be whatever the next thing is, they'll blame it on that, right? Hillary Clinton just came out and started to say that anybody that supported Donald Trump was an extremist, or in so many words. So now that's going to be the next thing. If you're a supporter of Donald Trump, then you are labeled as this. It's the same thing with QAnon. So if they want to discredit something as like, there is no doubt in any of our minds that child sex trafficking is happening. It is happening globally, and it's happening on a huge scale. It is the number one cash cow for any criminal organization, over drugs, over money laundering, over firearm sales, weapons sales, or anything like that. It's human trafficking. And this is why they want to deny it, because all these elites and these high profile politicians, like, they're involved. They're involved. And this is why nothing's ever going to happen. They are not going to investigate themselves. I've said that a million times. They are going to cover their own asses. And that's the thing. And if they can blame it on QAnon, well, then that gives them, even if it just gives them a month reprieve, then they can come up with another excuse to try to convince everybody that this is not going on when clearly this is going on.
Absolutely. That's why I started streaming, was because I was a guest and they said that I was feeding into a QAnon narrative talking about false memory syndrome. And I was like, oh, okay, so I'm going to have to start a YouTube channel and start talking about this because this is completely ridiculous.
Oh, I never would have taken that actually as a QAnon topic.
That's what started it all, was me being called a QAnon, Q, whatever, crazy person.
Q-tard. Q-tard, that's the go-to.
That's crazy.
Like, guys, I don't align with any sort of ideology like that. Politics aren't real, in my opinion. It's, give them bread and circuses and they'll be entertained. And people that still buy into the idea of a hero, that's why things aren't being done, right? That's why they're not being done, because they stay rich while they war us against each other. And at the end of the day, the reality is kids are going missing, because I think it's really interesting that people will try to deny that there is human trafficking, child sex trafficking, child trafficking going on, but no one denies the existence of, child sex materials, right? Child abuse videos, things like that. Nobody denies that that's going on. There's an abundance of that. Where the hell is that coming from, right? It has to come from somewhere. So the numbers don't really jive with that, but they'll never deny that those videos are out there, or that content or the demand for it is out there. But, somehow kids being trafficked, that's just a crazy conspiracy theory, whatever.
Well,
the ironic part.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
The biggest thing is they have to hide Epstein's black book. This is why they're keeping Giselle Maxwell on cold storage, and this is why you don't hear anything about her. We've never even gotten a mugshot. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what's coming out of her mouth, because they're keeping her to keep her quiet, and they can't Epstein her because that would look way too convenient, and that would feed into a QAnon conspiracy for all the people that are like, well, Epstein didn't kill himself. I am a believer that he isn't dead, but they're keeping Maxwell under wraps because all she's got to do is go tweet, and the whole house of cards comes down. And that she is the holder of a lot of information. Like they're telling, and it's a big joke that's going around. Well, we haven't seen Epstein's list, but we've seen this, and this. Well, they're absolutely right. Because, again, they're not going to investigate themselves. You're talking a massive implication of could be 100,000 people, right, that come out that are all involved in this. And they talk about, if the existence of aliens and extraterrestrials is disclosed, it'll be total anarchy on the earth, and people will stop with their religion, and it'll be the apocalypse, right? That is nothing compared to the ramifications of releasing the names of people on Epstein's list.
Here's the thing, though. I don't even care about the list. I'm fully convinced that the FBI created that meme in order to keep people asking for it. The FBI has the videotapes. Epstein's properties were wired with high-quality technology. They have the tapes. We want the tapes because the proof is out there. Like, seriously, because God only knows. But, I mean, literally, everything was wired and bugged. Just like, who was it? Craig Spence with the call boy scandal back in the 80s when he was in Washington, D.C. He had a lot of bad people videotaped, and, he suicided himself as well. They have the tapes. That's why we're never going to see anything, because there's going to be a lot of people that everybody knows, their faces. A couple
of questions, Dana, that are not being answered is who went in there right after Epstein died, who went in there and cleaned out his places. Like the next day, they went in there to take any residual surveillance photos or any surveillance that might have been there, hard drives, computers, whatever, because they need to keep that hidden. And you're right, they have all that, just like they have everything that's on Anthony Weiner's laptop, just like they have everything that's on Hunter Biden's laptop, right? They cannot let this information get out. And you may be right. It just may be the whole controlled opposition thing. Here, let's give them this Epstein. We need the Epstein list. It'll keep them busy for a while, keep us all distracted, right? And that's exactly what they did.
Ron, I think it's a regime change. The customers are still the same, but it's like when they switch from Escobar to the Cali cartel, the customers are still going to be there. They just want their money flowing from a different way because they want a higher percentage. I really think that's what it is. That's why they're not going to let it all out, is because they want to keep their customers satisfied and coming back. But they're going to change who's at the head now and where they're siphoning their money through.
Yeah, well, believe it or not, there's a Ukraine connection to this. Ukraine was #1 in human trafficking out of all countries, out of 194 countries in the world.
Yep.
There is a connection to Ukraine, and there's another reason why all that money's flowing back and forth, and FTX is involved in that also. And you notice how that Sam Bankman-Fried, like, he's basically walking. He's walking.
Sure did.
On billions and billions of dollars of money that was stolen from, people that took chances that they probably shouldn't have. And NY can tell you with me and JJ, like we're bringing the FTX angle into the Idaho 4 thing. Like there is a connection. There's a connection to all this stuff. And you want to talk about Utah, Dana, right? We know that's Mormon Grand Central, right? And who's talking about the Mormons and their drug trafficking?
Well, the Mormons specifically, the Leavitt family, the guy who is indicting Nicholas Alaverdian to bring him back to Utah, they have it's called the Leavitt Institute, and the purpose is to help establish legal systems and democracy in Ukraine and Moldova. Specifically, they were there before the Orange Revolution and before the coup. They call it their second home. What else are they doing? They're flying kids back and forth through a gifted kids program. That has all been documented. They've been doing that for well over 10 years. So, yeah, I would think that, especially with the weird adoption scandals on the tribes in Montana specifically, I think that there's a very serious problem going on in Ukraine.
I love that you just mentioned that because, and I'm not trying to toot our own horn over here, but me and Teresa covered when that kind of first came out, the situation with David Levitt, or however you say his name.
Yeah.
And we showed that connection, and I was like, this is just weird to me. And I'm glad that somebody else who's actually doing research and actually saying that they think there's something weird about that connection with Ukraine and Moldova.
Hell yeah, it was weird. I'm so glad you guys covered that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we didn't go
bizarre.
too crazy, but there was a few connections that I was just like, yo, this is like, I was like, just Ukraine is coming up just for so many weird reasons besides the war.
Oh, and Leavitt's wife, sorry to interrupt you, Dana. Leavitt's wife is some sort of sex therapist.
I know,
again, dealing with these like repressed memories and sexual trauma and all this stuff. Like, how
Shalom is a little hoe. I do not like her. She works for the Esalen Institute. Like, seriously, she's listed as an Esalen, like, advisor, whatever. And then Police Chief Wadman from the Franklin scandal, the guy who apparently impregnated Alicia Owens specifically and who was involved in the trafficking, he's also tied to the Levitts in Ukraine. He was running operations bringing democracy, specifically in Moldova. Yeah. All at the same time. And I also tracked Tim Ballard with his little Operation Good Friday in Chernihiv, where him and David Leavitt are both in Ukraine at the exact same time, coming out of their mouths, but they deny it vehemently.
Just nuts.
That's crazy.
Interesting.
I always wanted to say before, the most ironic part about the Q movement and QAnon, sorry to bring it up again, but like, is that the trafficking piece is true. That's the best part. Like, that's the one thing that like hooks you, because you're like, well, if that's true, then like maybe all this other stuff is true, right? And then that's the one thing that they try to discredit about it the most, right? But that's the true piece of it.
Yeah.
And that's the number one way to implant false memory, is that you have to associate a memory with another memory that has occurred or has been true.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I wanted to try to kind of sway back into the whole false memory implant thing, but the way I wanted to do it was actually kind of weird. But I was going to say, I think a lot of the problems that we have with today, with even people not seeing what's going on, is because I think we're a little confused or don't even know about the past. Now, for people, when we research, for me, this is how it is for me. A lot of times I'm reading stuff, looking at stuff, I'm taking like snapshots in my mind, And this is what's interesting me. So I'm actually, for me to be learning about what I'm doing, I'm actually creating kind of memories in my mind to refer to when I want to cover this topic. You know, with my notes and my videos, even though I have it all there, it's the memories that I created in my mind about this topic that I've got in my head. If we remove the past or kind of screw it up, and that's what people are using as their memories to kind of create their paradigm, is that kind of a way of like false memory? You know, like actually changing the past or covering it up or leaving things out.
I think that makes perfect sense. I really do.
Me too.
Yep.
I mean, because just from like us covering this gematria thing, we're going back to people who are like geniuses with many languages, alphabets, and numbers back in the 15 and 1600s. What the hell happened to us now?
Yeah.
People, no way would people have time to learn this shit.
Yeah, and this
Something
is one of
happened.
the reasons. This is one of the reasons and why they don't teach history in school anymore. They don't want us to know the past. Okay, how many of you know that, you know, the Pilgrims didn't just come from England and landed on Plymouth Rock? Right? A lot of people don't know that's not where they started. They started out on Provincetown. And when they figured out they couldn't get enough fresh water without going down to what is Truro today, you know, and I'm talking about the Cape, so I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but I am. And so the Pilgrims, they first landed on Provincetown. They didn't just show up on Plymouth Rock and Plymouth, Mass, you know? But how many kids know that? Oh, no, they landed on Plymouth and they had some turkey with Squanto, right? That's the story that you're sold in grade school all the way up. And when not even close to the facts.
You mean Charlie Brown Thanksgiving is not true, Ron? I am just shattered.
Total shattered. But I mean, no, you're absolutely right, because, you know, if you think about identity, it's not all these identities that they're telling people that you should identify with. Your true identity as an individual is your DNA and your memories. That's it. That's who you are. Your memories that you created throughout the lifespan that you were here, and your DNA. That is absolute. And if they have the ability to implant false memories, what does that say about an individual's identity?
And then they're giving you shit to even alter your DNA too. So I'm screwed from both ends now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Lisa.
Sorry.
It's a thought. No, that's
that was
a thought.
some deep shit right
it
there,
just
though.
Make me think of like transgender stuff and all vaccines and oh man, jeez, whoa.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, let's dive a little bit more into the false memory implants. I love that. I mean, I know that's what we're kind of on the peripheral talking about.
Yeah. Anything else, Dana, with that stuff that you'd like to bring up before we do start to wrap it up eventually?
Well, I'm trying to think. I think that if people want to do sort of a good study of this, it would be, I would look back, if you want to go as far back as, you know, World War II, specifically Joseph Mengele. People kind of focus on him as far as his obsession with like chopping up twins and whatever. Like that's what we see in horror movies. But, you know, he was absolutely, you know, there was funding going on even before World War II for trauma bonding research that was funded by the Rockefellers. And that's also what Mengele was focused on as well, was, you know, his fascination with twins was also trying to figure out the trauma bonding and that sort of those genetic markers that bond someone, and if you can traumatize them enough to completely separate them and be able to control that, on top of the mescaline, MDA, LSD experiments at Dachau specifically. And then sort of, you know, looking at MK, because I don't think that MKUltra's cute. I think that whole like, oh, the government was giving people acid and we got, you know, Timothy Leary, cool. No, it's not cute. It was literally a torture program that's still going on. However, as you get a bit later, right before, and I think that her case was the catalyst for it as far as the anti-cult movement, But I think that that is one of the earliest public indicators of sort of false memory brainwashing was Patty Hearst and the SLA and Donald DeFreeze and what they were doing to him at Vacaville, because they were doing MKUltra on those prisoners. They were talking about cutting out the part of their brain that made them violent. And then it just happens to be that, you know, Patty Hearst, you know, she's this heiress, and she happens to get kidnapped by Donald DeFreeze specifically and brainwashed, and all of a sudden, you know, she's the Siberian Liberation Army rebel that goes from being a princess to she's out there with this huge gun, you know what I'm saying? With like paint on her face.
From princess to bank robber. Yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly, like Programmed to Kill, right?
Yeah,
and then, of course, as the trial comes out, and you have Jolly West, you have Margaret Sanger, you have Martin Orne, and then I found in a really old newspaper, Alan Dershowitz also joined her defense team as well, which is fascinating because Alan Dershowitz was also a part of the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. But they literally, it was a cover-up. It was a total cover-up. And Patty Hearst wrote a book where she talks about her experience once they got her out and they were trying to help her recover, and she was in the hospital, and she talks about how disgusting and perverted Jolly West was, as well as Martin Orne and Margaret Singer. She has nothing nice to say about any of them, but I think that that is the first big indicator in American sort of history where we see this, you know, these things can happen and you can completely lose your concept of reality and you're out of control, or you may lose control, and also hide your kids, hide your wife, because there's cults everywhere, right? And then obviously the False Memory Syndrome Foundation comes much later. But yes, Alan Dershowitz was involved in all of that too. So isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, no doubt he's sketchy. Alan Dershowitz is definitely sketchy. A brilliant mind. But with
an
that,
evil genius.
Okay, I was just going to say,
one
with
connected
that,
to OJ.
Yeah, with that becomes, you know, most of all evil people are geniuses. That's why they call them evil geniuses, right? Yeah. I've been accused of that many times from a federal court judge, actually. Believe it or not.
Not to get like weird or completely off topic, but there was something you mentioned before, I think with Mengele, and you said something about like doing I guess, experiments on twins, you said, or whatever, doing stuff to twins, and you said there's a lot of, I guess, maybe the way I took it as you kind of also meant that there was also a lot of symbolism of that in movies as well. And
I think so.
And now he was kind of involved with MKUltra, correct?
Obviously, they're not going to confirm or deny, but I absolutely think. I'm sorry. Yeah, are we supposed to trust these people?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Me and Thrash, again, you know, covering MKUltra, I don't know how it came up, but I am questioning it, and I know this is going to sound weird, but this was like a stone thought I think I had, and me and him kicked it around. Sidney Gottlieb, he was, you know, involved in MKUltra, and he had a daughter named Penny. Now, if you know anything about Sidney Gottlieb, before he got into MKUltra, he was actually known for somebody making kind of like 007 type gadgets, making all these like kind of weird gadget type things. And he had a daughter named Penny, and you have Inspector Gadget with a niece named Penny.
Yo,
did fucking we get sent Inspector Gadget is Sidney Gottlieb?
Yo. And then
why not?
MKUltra has a Canadian connection, to Montreal. Inspector Gadget was produced by a Canadian company called Nelvana. And then I went down a whole rabbit hole of like what Nelvana means. And I was like, oh my God, you're blowing my mind right now with this Inspector Gadget rabbit hole. I love that show.
So
Go Gadget.
God damn it.
I think that sounds legit. Absolutely.
It's bugged out.
Sounds legit to me.
It's gotta be something with the 3 G's. Go Gadget. Like,
wow.
Oh,
what the meme say? Like, symbolism will be their downfall, right? Like, they can't resist it. They give themselves away every time. So,
but I think when Mengele was testing on twins, I think he was looking for that memory and genetic connection, because he was inflicting pain on one and seeing if the other one was responding. And if they have identical DNA, then that other one should feel it if DNA and memory are linked. And I think that was his whole premise for the experimental design.
Yeah.
They just don't focus on that, though. And I think that's for a reason. When they talk about him, it's like always, changing eye color, trying to change the irises and chopping them up. And it's like, let's
they were they were more interested in releasing information on Mengele that was just on the surface, like you say, injecting color to make all the kids' eyes blue, right? They didn't want you to know about the psychological tests that he was doing in on the twins, right? And why would he be so interested in twins, right? He was more interested in the fact that they were connected, just like you said, right? They're connected psychologically, DNA, especially if they were identical twins, because he did studies on identical twins and also unidentical twins. And he was trying to find the difference between them, because identical twins come from a split egg, the same egg. Non-identical twins come from two separate eggs that just born at the same time.
Correct.
Huge difference. And he wanted to find the correlation between the two. That is information that the United States wanted, but they don't want you to know that that's what they wanted. They just wanted Mengele to say, okay, well, he was just doing this because he wanted to breed more Nazis and more people that fit the Nazi profile. That's what they want you to believe. And why was Joseph Mengele allowed to live the rest of his life when Adolf Eichmann wasn't? I mean, they knew what Mengele was. They could have went and got Mengele anytime they wanted, but Mengele would have come out and said, okay, well, you could do that, but this is what I'm going to say. Right? So they just his family became huge industrialists in South America. I mean, Mengele Tractor was one of the biggest industrial companies in South America who made farm equipment.
That's right.
That's all from Joseph Mengele, right? And they just let him live because they did not want any of his information to come out. And, and I don't know if this is before you guys' time, but the movie and the story Boys from Brazil.
That's a great movie.
That was about Joseph Mengele, but the premise of that is that he made a bunch of actual Hitler clones that was spread all over the world. And he could have been involved in some type of genetic studies, and I'm sure he was. But the whole idea of the twins was the number one thing that Mengele was into. And funny enough, there is a couple of areas in South America that have way abnormal amount of twins being born. And it just happens to be the area that Joseph Mengele was the local doctor. So his studies continued, and this is why they allowed Mengele to stay alive. You mean to tell me that those Israeli hit squads couldn't find Mengele? They knew where he was. He was untouchable. Yep. And the United States probably told Israel, look, he's untouchable. We'll give you Eichmann. How's that sound? The guy that came up with the final solution, the architect for that, even though he wasn't the only one. But they assassinated Heydrich, and he was actually up above Eichmann. Eichmann answered to Heydrich. So, if you wanted to get into any more, Nazi stuff, we can do that in another show. But there was a reason why Mengele was allowed to live out the rest of his life.
There was a lot of them that were allowed, quite frankly.
Yeah.
There's I don't know if you guys have ever seen this lady on Instagram, I think, and why you know who I'm talking about. Agent X. Yes. Is her handle.
Yes.
Okay, so she claims to be Mengele's daughter.
Oh, damn.
Right? And really? Guess what her name is? I just remembered. Guess what her name is?
Penny?
Yup.
Oh, no. I know who you're talking about.
I was like, wait.
Penny Lane Shepherd, right? Or something like
Penny
that.
Lane Shepherd.
Yeah, I've actually been told a few times over my about 3 years in podcasting to have her on. I've spoken to her. I just never asked her.
I know.
We gotta look into that.
Yeah. On the idea, it's very interesting on the idea of false memory, because she makes a lot of lofty claims, and you could say, is she making this up? Is this coming from a repressed memory? Are these implanted false memories? Like, that is a rabbit hole I'm going to send all of you on everybody in the chat dig into that because I want answers. And why is her name Penny?
If she is Mengele's daughter, then she must be my age or older. Right?
Yeah, she's a bit older,
okay.
and she claims that her brother John is high up in the entertainment industry and like controls Kanye West and like all these people. Look into it.
Yeah. More mind control there, according to Kanye, that he was being mind controlled, right? For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
he's definitely out there. I've never got a good vibe out of that guy. You know, maybe I'm wrong, but you know, I mean, now all of a sudden he's able to come out and talk about these things, and he's still alive. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can wrap it up there. Actually, we're at an hour and a half. That was a great chat. Thank you so much, Dana, for coming on. I really appreciate it. Let everybody know where they can find your stuff again, please.
Rotting Jewels on Instagram and YouTube, and Dana Duda on Twitter.
Awesome. Definitely go check out her stuff. If you do not know who she is yet, go check it out. Some really good stuff over there. And I'm going to let Ron, we'll start with you, since we didn't have, I really didn't want to do it at the beginning. For everybody who's still listening, let everybody know what's up with you and where they can find your show.
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Ron from New England, all one word, and the Wicked Planet podcast page, also on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter /X at Ron from NE. And you can find the Wicked Planet podcast wherever podcasts are found. Come and check us out. We do one episode a week so far, and Buckley and I were actually discussing we're going to try to ramp that up to 3 shows a week.
Awesome.
It's one of our little goals. And hey, I just want to thank you for inviting me to come on to do these shows. I love these subjects, and I want to thank Dana for taking the time to come on, and everybody else on the panel. And I see a couple of ladies that are going to get some new follows as soon as I get their information.
Awesome. Ron, it's always a pleasure to have you on, for real. I always love you jumping on and having your perspective on things.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anytime.
Lisa, thank you. I know you don't got no show, but I'm kind of a co-host again, on the Occult Rejects and my Patriot show. Thank you for everything. When you bring something to the table, it's always great. That's why I ask you to come on. And Teresa, the spiritual gangster herself, let everybody know what is up with your amazing podcast.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for having me. This was so fun to hang out with all you guys. Thank you, Dana, so much. But yeah, you can check out the Spiritual Gangsters, YouTube, Rumble, all the major podcast platforms. And please check out our newest kind of sub show, I guess, on Spiritual Gangsters called Clown World Weekly, where NY and I dive into crazy weird news of the week, make connections, and basically make fun of society at large. But it's a good time.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really digging it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for coming on. And I also do want to thank everybody in the chat. That is what's up. Everybody who checked out the live. We had a lot going on inside the chat, and I say it over and over again. Yeah. For people who check out these shows, go back to the lives if they're up, or if you're watching the live now. Check the chat. There's almost a whole other topic and show going on in there. So, I really do appreciate everybody who jumps in and adds to the chat. That's why I like doing it. And that is the end of another Occult Rejects. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.